is, oh, there I am. Pastor Jim is on vacation, and so he is away resting with his family. He sent me pictures this week. They're in Arizona, so the beautiful red rocks of Arizona. But if you heard our NYC update last week, I never want to see those red rocks again. No, I'm just kidding. When you get stranded somewhere, you just never want to go there again. So, well, I'm just so excited to have you in the house of the Lord with us this morning. About 6 years ago, my daughter was just over 1 year old, and we had finally started to feel like Weymouth was really home. And not just like the town of Weymouth, but our community, our church. I had a mentor once tell me that it takes like 2 years for people to feel like your people, right? 2 years to be able to look someone in the eye and them look you in the eye and you say, you're my people. And so here we were. We really felt like Weymouth was really home. We had started to find our people, to find rhythm, to figure out how we did this crazy thing of parenting and both of us working full time. When all of a sudden, in what seemed like a matter of a couple days, there seemed to start this buzzing worry. The news was talking about it. Our social media feeds were blowing up about it, and no one thought that it would actually reach us here. And maybe by now you were like, oh, I know what she's talking about, right? Then we turned around and found ourselves in lockdown because COVID-19 had come to our doorstep. And I remember the scale of my prayers back then, from what started an area of, that will never reach us. Anyone else there with me? Like, that will never reach us. To really honestly being scared to step outside the walls of my own home. I found myself so fearful, so filled with anxiety. What would happen next? How many people would test positive? How many people would we lose? Would COVID-19 reach my small daughter? My mom is a nurse, and so she continued to work through COVID-19, and that was a constant prayer on my mind. Would you keep my mom safe? I have this really, really distinct memory, and if you've been in my home, you know we have windows looking out to Pine Street, of standing next to my front window, blinds open, window was closed. Just paralyzed with fear of whatever was out there. And I felt like God was not hearing me. I felt like God was not hearing anyone. Can I be honest about that? Like God has just left us here to deal with this sickness. But you know what I found? Was when I would be quiet enough to still my heart and my mind, His peace was endless. When I stopped allowing myself to scroll down the rabbit trail of worst case scenarios, His comfort wrapped around me. But I think that we all did this, and I think that we all do this in moments of our lives where we start to say things like, what happens now? What am I supposed to do? How do I move forward? How do I know what choice to make? How do I know if it's the right or the wrong choice? What if I make the wrong choice and it hurts the people around me? What if I make the wrong choice and I miss out on opportunities? Anyone here have FOMO? Yeah, me too. I don't like missing out on anything. What if my choices cost me something? What if my choices cost something for the people around me? What are even the cost of my choices? Will I lose myself? Can I actually trust the God who made the heavens and the earth? Can I trust the God who created the planets to care about the small details of my life? Can I trust the God who split the seas, right? He split the seas, and He guided a nation through wilderness with a pillar of fire to protect me, to know me, to hear me. Maybe you've said things like, I'm trying to hear God's voice, but sometimes it's so quiet. I'm trying to hear God's voice, but everyone around me is so loud. I'm trying to hear God's voice, but if I'm honest, I don't know what his voice sounds like sometimes. How should I know what to do if I can't hear him? Have you ever thought that? Have you ever asked any of those questions? Have these questions ever just kind of plagued your mind? Have these questions ever kept you up at night? Have these questions ever had you inwardly screaming, or maybe it was actually an outward cry, right? Because Lord knows we don't all have it together. Can our church say amen? Yeah. Maybe it sounded like this, right? God, help me. God, hear me. God, rescue me. God, deliver me. God, stop the pain. God, what are you doing? God, are you doing anything? God, would you just stay close to me? Over the last month, we've gotten to sit in the room with the story of Esther, right? We've seen the lavish parties of King Xerxes. We've heard the refusal of Queen Vashti. We've heard the mourning cries of Mordecai. We've watched the prideful, vengeful, gruesome fall of Haman. And we've met the strong, brave, selfless woman, Esther. And in the midst of all of this, we search for God's voice in the book of Esther. And so I thought I'd ask real quick, church. Over the last month, we've listened to our pastors preach about Esther and the people of Esther. What stuck out to you? What stuck out to you? Come on. What stuck out to you about the story of Esther? I'm a youth pastor and I'm patient. What'd you say?
How God worked it all out for Esther to be in that position.
Yes, how God worked it all out. He was in the midst of every moment. Absolutely. Somebody else, what stuck out to you as you listened to the pastors preach about Esther? Or maybe your own study?
Even when she felt alone, she still had somebody on her side.
Yeah, and we're talking about Esther, right?
Yeah.
Even when Esther felt alone, it still felt like someone was on her side. Yeah. Two more, you can do it.
Her faith. Her faith.
Her faith. Esther's faith was unwavering. Yeah.
God's name is never mentioned, yet he's always there.
I love that, right? God's name is never mentioned, but he's always there. Absolutely. One more for bonus points, anyone? Obedience. Yes. Obedience and surrender. Yes. I love how you mentioned God's voice, right? In the midst of all of the story of Esther, in the midst of the obedience, in the midst of faithfulness and bravery, we search for the voice of God. The God who cried out to Adam and Eve in the garden, the God whose voice saved the young life of Isaac, the voice who spoke through the flames of a burning bush, the voice who guided Moses on the mountaintops, the voice who called to Samuel in the middle of the night to follow him. And yet here in the book of Esther, nothing. And it all has us kind of stepping back, right? And at this point, church, if you're not stepping back and being like, I wonder what is happening here, you should be, right? It has us all stepping back and scratching our heads and wondering, hello? God, where are you? Right? We've seen so far either his voice or a prophet has spoken through him, right? And it feels like it's time for God to step in. It's here where I think we realize that maybe the story of Esther is actually a lot like our story. Key leaders are corrupt and acting in their own interests, right? Swayed from one side to the other by trusted advisors. People around us living for the glory of themselves. Climbing and stepping on anyone who gets in the way. You know any of those scenarios in your life? How about others mourning and speaking out for the marginalized? Trying to make a difference. But their voices seem to go unheard. Singular, brave actions, stepping outside the norm. Advocating, being bold, refusing to walk in the stream of societal norms, making a difference. We have gotten to see through the story of Esther her bravery, right? We've gotten to see through the story of Esther Mordecai's bravery, that they were able to save the Jews, to save God's people. That through patience, through obedience, through trust, that God never left them even when he was quiet, right? Through patience, obedience, and trust, God never left them even when he felt quiet. After the death of Haman, who was trying to essentially annihilate the Jews, both Esther and Mordecai pleaded with the king to create a different decree, to keep the Jews safe. And you know what? He did just that. And we read the results of that in Esther chapter 8, verses 15. And it says, when Mordecai left the king's presence, when Mordecai the Jew left the king's presence, he was wearing royal garments of blue and white, a large crown of gold, and a purple robe of fine linen. And the city of Susa held a joyous celebration. For the Jews, for the people of God, it was a time of happiness and joy, gladness and honor. In every province and in every city to which the edict of the king came, there was joy and gladness among the Jews, among God's people, with feasting and celebrating, and many people of other nationalities became Jews because fear of the Jews had seized them. God was so faithful. Mordecai and Esther's journey through this story at every turn, right? It just seems like the odds are stacked against them. Careless leadership. Esther required to participate in a beauty pageant that lasted how many years, church? Does anyone know? 2 years, right? If you watch VeggieTales, it's like quick, right? Over and done with. It's not like that, right? My kids love VeggieTales. Right? 2 years of getting ready to just be presented to the king. Haman wanting to kill the Jewish people. Plot twist, Esther and Mordecai are the Jewish people. Said careless leadership are agreeing to get rid of an entire Jewish people. Esther met with the choice to advocate for her people at the cost of her what? Her life, right? Her life. And yet their faithfulness to their God, to their faith, to their people, never wavered. And we see that through their faithfulness, God provided even in the quiet. God provided even in the quiet. We read at the end of the story in chapter 10. King Xerxes imposed a tribute throughout the empire to its distant shores, and all his acts of power and might together with a full account of the greatness of Mordecai, whom the king had promoted. Are they not written in the book of annals of the king of Media and Persia? Mordecai the Jew was second in rank to King Xerxes. Mordecai the Jew was second in rank to King Xerxes, preeminent among the Jews and held in high esteem by his many fellow Jews because he worked for the good of his people and spoke up for the welfare of all Jews. Right? Because Mordecai worked for the good of his people and he spoke up for the welfare of all the Jews, of all of God's people. God provided. God gifted and graced Mordecai and Esther to protect his people. And what did they do with all those gifts and opportunities that God gave them? They offered them back. They honored God with their choices. They honored him even when it was scary. They honored him even when they couldn't see the end of his story. Esther's response, right, when Mordecai told her, for such a time as this, Esther, it was time to step into her faith, right? It was time to be brave. I think this comment back to Mordecai best encapsulates her faithfulness, right? She says this, if I perish, I perish. For such a time as this, Esther, to move forward. And she responds in just boldness, if I perish, I perish. I'm going to do it no matter what, right? No matter what the cost is to me, I'm going to follow our God, follow the God that's led us up to this moment. When God feels quiet, how do you respond? When your circumstances aren't looking good, how do you respond? When it seems like everyone is against you, how do you respond? When God is calling you to do hard things, how do you respond? I wonder if you pray more than you've ever prayed before, right? Just like on your knees, God, I don't know what's going on, but I trust in your plan. And you just fully lean into that connection with God. Do you choose gratitude, even when it's hard? Are you diving so deep into his word? Are you surrounding yourself? I think this is so key, church. Are you surrounding yourself with people who lead you to Jesus? Right? Are you surrounding yourself with people who lead you to Jesus? Are you fasting? Are you worshiping God with your choices? Or do you scroll more? Do you complain more about how hard your life is? Do you turn to the people who are actually leading you away from Jesus and just whine and complain and talk about others and just sit in it? Are you focusing on what makes you happy, what benefits you? How about this? Are you just living a selfish lifestyle? Maybe you're sitting in your seat, you're like, no, that's not me, absolutely not. Could it be though? When we said to Jesus that we were committing to following him, he never said it would be easy, right? If anything, he actually said it would be harder. He said, people might not like us. He said that we might not always get what we want. He preached this crazy thing called an upside down kingdom. Right? This crazy thing called an upside down kingdom, where the first shall be last and the last shall be first. We see in the story of Esther, Mordecai, honestly, he starts as the last, right? He's not really anyone, he's going to be killed, right? And then by the end of the story, he's what? He's second in command to the king. We are called to a life of humility, a life of obedience, a life of honoring God with our lives. Where in your life today could you respond like Esther and Mordecai? Saying something like, God, even though you seem quiet, I'm going to choose to follow you, to live out your mission in my life, to love God and serve others. God, even though you seem quiet, I'm going to choose to follow you, to live out your mission in my life, to love God and to love others. And if my choices reflect anything outside of those two boundaries, call me out. Right? If anything in my life reflects outside of the boundaries of love God and serve others, call me out. Be honest with me, God. Help me to stop prioritizing me and prioritize the kingdom, even when it inconveniences me, even when it's scary, and especially when I don't know the outcome. Something I like to do with my students often is we do this thing called a breath prayer. And it does a couple different things, right? It like regulates your nervous system to breathe in and breathe out. Just like slows you down. But it also reminds us to just put our focus on our King. And so there's this breath prayer that I like to do, and it goes like this. You breathe in, and you say, when the storms rage within me, and then you breathe out, you quiet every storm. Right? You breathe in when the storms rage within me, and you breathe out, you quiet every storm. What is God calling you to this morning? Even when he's quiet. I think we're really good at filling our quiet spaces, right? You just stick an AirPod in, fill it with noise, right? Just turn your Alexa on, turn your radio on, turn your phone on, Spotify, whatever. If you're quietly sitting, maybe I'll call someone, right? Fill the quiet. If I'm sitting quietly, maybe I'll scroll some more and watch some videos. Fill the quiet, right? God wants to speak just to you, though. And he needs you to listen. Can you imagine what would have happened to the Jewish people had Esther and Mordecai not listened? Can you imagine what would happen to the Jewish people if Moses hadn't have listened? If Samuel hadn't have listened? Lean in. Embrace the quiet. He's right in it. We're going to hear this song. And during it, would you just seek after our King? Maybe pray scary prayers like, God, I need you to convict my heart. I need to have bravery like Esther and Mordecai. I need to embrace the quiet and know that you're still there and not fill it with the nonsense of my life. We invite you this morning to just take a posture of prayer that honors our King. Whether it's here at the altar, to just like humbly just lay it out. God, I just don't know what's going on. Or whether it's in your seats. Jesus, sometimes it feels like you're too quiet. Sometimes I feel like I can't hear you. And sometimes I'm tempted to fill the space with whatever. But this morning, would you just help me to just settle into your presence? To trust you even when I cannot hear you. To remember the mission. To love you. And to love others. Because when the storms rage within me, you quiet every